All right, let's move on to question number 3 out of 6, since we're almost on schedule. Running a little bit behind. All right, affordability is a big issue in South Florida. How will that impact our market in 2023? For the average working class citizen, owning a home right now seems impossible. Between prices not coming down and cost capital going up and insurance going up.
Well, it's a huge, it's probably a bigger problem in South Florida than anywhere in the country right now. You've got median household incomes that are somewhere in the 62 to 66,000 range in Miami-Dade and Broward, a little bit higher in Palm Beach County. Yet you've got an average single-family home cost over $600,000. We all know that as a general rule of thumb, 30% of your income should go towards your housing cost, and 40% maximum go towards your housing costs and your other credit debts. We have a lot of people in South Florida right now that are paying well over 50% of their household income if they can get into a home. Some as high as 70, 75%. I mean, they're sacrificing their recreations and their quality of life for the house. I don't know what's going to happen with that other than it's going to have to be market conditions. And I happen to think that we're reaching the pinnacle of pricing in South Florida at this point. We're going to see changes in the number of sales coming down, the number of inventory rising, which market dynamics should tell you that should drive prices down. Now, is it going to be anything like 2008? No, it won't, because we don't have the number of crap loans, toxic loans that we had at that time, with waitresses with 5 mortgage payments on 5 condos and, zero down, no credit check, no income verification. We don't have those type of loans in the marketplace, and there's a lot more equity in homes now at this point. Over 40% of sales in the last couple of years in South Florida have been all cash deals. It's double what it is in the rest of the country. So there's a lot more equity in the homes, but it's also because of these prices, first-time buyers been priced out. Move-up buyers, it's very difficult. If you think you're going to sell your home because it's worth so much more money, and you go out and you look in the area right now, you find that you have to settle for less than what you already have. So, I think that market dynamics are going to, I just think it's a number of things. I think the flood of Northeasterners that's been driving prices, in particular in Southeast Florida, in Boca Raton, and Jupiter, in Wellington, and Weston, and Fort Lauderdale, and other areas, I think that's going to slow. I think we're going to see more people putting their houses up on the market, creating more inventory with slower sales pace. These typical market conditions should push prices down. We should see interest rates begin to come down as well, which should open up the market to more potential buyers. But right now, anything new, you can't buy a new studio condominium for under $350,000 now. That most people, especially first-time buyers, just cannot afford. So I think the market dynamics are going to push prices down in 2024. And I think you're going to see things more favorable to buyers, which is a good thing and a necessary thing. I always tell people the South Florida market is different from almost every market in the United States. It's more like a roller coaster ride. You have incredible escalation and peaks until it gets up to a point where affordability goes out the window, and then you start to see you go down the hill, and then you come back up. It's not just a steady market. of 3, 5, 8% increases like many other markets in the United States. So it's subject to up and downs. South Florida has had an incredible run, really since 2014, about 10 years. And I just think things are going to change now, and especially in 2024.
So, Jack, I know there's people watching. We got close to 90 people between in person and online, and they're wondering this question. So I'm just going to ask it proactively. There are markets, and there are submarkets, and there are submarkets within submarkets, and there are subunits within the submarkets within the submarkets. So what that means is there's South Florida, then there's Boca Raton, and there's Woodfield Country Club, and then there's Woodfield Hunt Club. And then within there, there's phase 1, phase 2, phase 3. And within there, there's the nice house, and then there's the shitty house. If you had to pick an aggregate number for what the market will do performance-wise overall in South Florida in 2024, you said you expect pressure on prices. Is it 2% pressure? Is it 52% pressure? And what areas, if you had to hide out from, let's call it deflation or disinflation, where would you invest in South Florida in that time?
I think we're looking at a 5 to 10% drop in 2024 market-wide. Just think about the increases that you have seen in the last 4 years. Historically, when you look at real estate appreciation over a 100-year period, okay, it typically averages 3 to 4%. We've seen increases, double digits now for many years. It's far past the level of affordability. It's far past what people have seen as increases in their own incomes. So I think that we've reached kind of that pinnacle now. We've gotten to the point where prices are unaffordable for a large portion of the population, especially those that have lived in South Florida for many years. And we're going to see market dynamics, supply and demand are going to put pressure on prices to come down. Now, is that, we've seen almost doubling of prices in the last 4 to 5 years. So when I say 5 to 10%, that may sound like a large drop, but compared to the appreciation in the last 4 years, it's rather insignificant. It's a small drop. So some areas are going to change more than others. The eastern side is probably going to maintain prices better than the west areas. So I would say that, Marshall, you've got a house down on a canal there. That's probably going to continue to do well. Now, out around Woodfield and in other areas, we may see larger price decreases there. So it depends, and it's like you said, there's within markets, there's submarkets within those. It gets down to a neighborhood level. Sometimes it gets down to a street level. But overall, for the 3 counties, I think 5 to 10% is a realistic figure for how much we're going to see prices decline in median price levels over 2024.
All right. So you just inherited $1 million and you could buy in one place in South Florida. Where are you buying?
Well, I'm buying in Cabo San Lucas.
Yeah.
But,
what city and why?
Well, I think I'd probably buy in Jupiter. I happen to like Jupiter a lot. I think it's a beautiful area. It's got an influx. It's got a momentum that Boca has enjoyed for many years. But I'm probably buying in, if I can, in the eastern part of Jupiter and possibly in a golf course community, and maybe have Rory McIlroy or a few other guys as my neighbors. But I like the Jupiter area in particular. Now,
Jack, that's an emotional buy. I think Marshall's question sounds more geared towards investment.
Correct. What I'm asking is if the average person coming from, let's just use the New York, they want to buy in South Florida and they want to invest in South Florida. I mean, rephrase, not just buy, but invest. Where's the greatest opportunity in South Florida?
Well, Eastern Boca has been very strong for many years now, and I think Boca has a desirability. It has a recognition level that people want. You know, they want that Boca address as opposed to Delray or Deerfield Beach. If they can afford Boca, especially Eastern Boca, they want that. So there's a synergy that and real estate primarily is emotional bias, by the way. It's not just investment, but it's emotions that play a large part in where you buy. So I would look at Eastern Boca. Eastern Fort Lauderdale. I don't think I'd buy anything right on the beach and probably not within a mile of the beach, the way things are changing now. Weston has been a very good area as well. I mean, I look at the marketplaces that have shown historically more stability through some of the downturns and which ones have established themselves as names for lower crime, good schools, beautiful, excellent shopping nearby, places of worship. These are things that I think are all important when someone looks at buying. And if you're just buying purely for investment, let's say you're not going to live in it, you're looking to lease the place out, get as much as you can, realize appreciation as well, then I'm probably looking at buying some of the older condo buildings. And we're seeing a lot of developers do that now because many of them are very well placed, excellent locations. They're being hit with large assessments right now because of what happened with Champlain Towers. And so, I mean, I'd probably look at finding a nice small condominium building where I might be able to go in and buy the majority of units and control the HOA and turn it into a rental property with the potential in the future of reversing it back to condominiums in a better market time.
All right. Thank you. I'm going to go. I didn't realize what I asked you was actually question number 5. So I cut you off. Sorry. I'm going to go with question number 4. Then I'm going to step out and Ben's going to take over. And then we'll go to Q&A after number 6. So I get this comment question a lot from younger generations, especially. I'm going to wait because prices are going to come down. I'm going to wait because rates are going to come down. And meanwhile, some of those, I say younger generation, some of my friends started saying that 15 years ago and they still rent the house. So point being, they haven't done anything except wait. And they've missed out on market booms and they've missed out on market busts. What advice would you give to the younger generation right now? They can buy and throw caution to the wind. They can wait for prices to come down. They can rent. There's so many options. Well, there's 3 options there. But what would you tell, let's call it a 21-year-old out of college, just got a job at a prestigious law firm making $150,000 a year, and they qualify for a $600,000 mortgage?
Well, I'd say stay at home with your parents for another year and continue to save up down payments so that you can hopefully get the best interest rate mortgage loan possible in a year. I think inventory is going to pick up and sales are going to slow over this next year, and conditions will be more favorable for purchase towards the end of 2024. So that would be my initial advice. Rents are sky high. I mean, there's no getting around it. It's very difficult for people even just to afford their rents right now. A large majority of the population are living paycheck to paycheck. But with the circumstance that you gave me, I would say find a studio or find something to rent as low as you can, possibly in an older building, maybe not in the area that you want to live in, but something where you can save money and look to buy in a year. Do your homework over the next year.
So what I'm hearing is a year from now, you mentioned earlier, you expect prices to be lower. But one thing I've always said, at least to my agents and my friends and anyone that asks for advice, is do the math. If you're paying $5,000 a month in rent, that's $60,000 a year. If you buy a $600,000 house and it goes down 10%, you're down to $60,000. It's a wash. The only difference is you didn't get to plant your roots for an entire year. You were transient for another year. If there was no catastrophic collapse of the market, I see no reason to wait. Unless, like you said, you could live at home with your parents. Is it worth waiting out the market to save maybe 10 or 12% only to spend that in rent?
Well, I think interest rates are also going to drop, Marshall. So it's a combination of prices dropping and interest rates dropping. So I would say, yeah, I mean, to me, it makes sense. We saw a lot of people that bought in 2008 at the height of the market like things are right now. Now, things aren't going to drop the same, but truth is those people that bought then waited 15 years for prices to come back up to what they paid. So I don't know if your analogy is that great of one. It depends on the market conditions that are ahead and projecting and trying to forecast those market conditions.
That's interesting. So you're looking at the big picture of, okay, yeah, you spent $60,000 in rent, you saved $60,000 on the house, but a year from then, the house is worth another $60,000 less, potentially.
Yeah, and once again, if the interest rate drops from 6% to 4%, then you've got considerable savings. So, I mean, to me, I'd wait a year. I mean, I not 2 years or 5 years necessarily, but I mean, I'd wait a year we're in a transition. We're going from a pinnacle of the marketplace now to things are going to come down. I just, I believe in old, I'm an old guy. I believe in old values, and you don't buy when things are at the height of the marketplace, because it's a sure way to lose money. So, what if you need to sell that place a year or two from now, and now you find out that it's worth $100,000 less, and you can't find a buyer for it? So, I would say wait, take advantage of the marketplace. Not a long term, not a long period of time, but I think a year is with the changing environment. I would say tell me, in West Boca, are you not already seeing changes? Are you not already seeing sales slow? Are you not already seeing prices change?
We're not seeing sellers drop their prices. We're seeing sellers that are stubborn, that are still caught up in what my home used to be worth 2 years ago during COVID. And I could have sold my house for 2 years ago. So they're staunch, and they're not motivated to drop their price because there's no great buying opportunity for them to use the cash that they take out of their house. So if they want $1 million for their home, and we tell them their home today is worth $900,000, they'll say, fine, I'll just sit on it because I'm not motivated. Right now you've got people that sometimes are motivated because they want to downsize, but with interest rates as high as they are, and they're locked into their prior loan at 2.5%, 3.5%. Wait a second, you want me to sell my $1 million home, and you want me to downsize to a $600,000 property, but my monthly payments are nearly the same on my $1 million home, plus I got to pack all my crap and move it. Why would I do that? So there's too many disparities. And then you've got the buyers who are sitting on the fence, like you, anticipating economic slowdown, prices coming down. But they're saying these rents are so high, my God, a 2-bedroom, 2-bath apartment is $3,000 a month. I'm going to piss away $36,000 this year in rent. And do I really think that property that I want to buy is going to be $36,000 cheaper next year? So you've got a lot of competing interests that are causing this absolute not turmoil. In fact, it's just the stagnation, because sellers don't want to give up their low interest rates. They're hell-bent on what their home used to be worth during COVID. They're frustrated they're not getting showing activities. Buyers are waiting for some Armageddon, which is not happening. You've got the president trying to beat down the Federal Reserve to bring down interest rates so he has at least some leg to stand on to attempt a re-election. And all these things cause everyone to be, at a complete standstill. And buyer-broker agreements are mounting without the buyers pulling the trigger. Listing agreements are expiring. People are going back to extensions. And there's lots of activity, but no one's actually crossing the finish line. Everyone's kind of teased up on third base, waiting on what to do, and the bases have been loaded for a long time.
Well,
I would mention that in the last quarter, in the 3 counties, that 16% of prices were lowered on the multiple listing service. That was not the case in previous quarters. Nobody was lowering their prices. They're lowering their prices for a reason. In some cases, like you said, it's because they're expecting a higher price than what the market will bear right now. But when you start seeing a change in the number of people that are lowering their asking price, that's a good forward indicator of where the market is headed, I think.
All right, and now the grand finale question before we get to questions and answers, and Ben can determine how many questions. I guess we have 30 minutes of Q&A, so at your discretion. Black Swan events. This is my favorite one. I say it to the end of the interview every year because last year you said, well, there could be a war that breaks out. Well, you were wrong. There wasn't a war. There were 2 wars. So you were actually double right. What kind of Black Swan event in 2024 can really rattle the South Florida market unexpectedly and catastrophically? And do you foresee that event happening? And if so, what is it?
Well, the first one is the most obvious, which is a major Category 4 or 5 hurricane takes a direct hit on Southeast Florida. That would be, I think, the most catastrophic right away. Next, I think, is we're going to see a tremendous slowdown in the migration of the Northeasterners coming down to South Florida. And that is going to affect the number of sales and also affect the inventory. Now, that won't be a boom kind of thing. It's going to be slow and progressing. But I think if you watch the numbers each month, you're going to see a trend of this appearing now. I would mention that as high as prices are in Miami-Dade and Broward counties, that we've actually seen a lowering of condo median prices over the last 10 months, which is something many people are probably not aware of. Prices are starting to come down. More buyers are reducing their asking prices than they have in the last 3 or 4 years. We're starting to see fewer sales in certain marketplaces and starting to see inventory, maybe slight, but still inventory changes. I don't think it's going to be 2.5 months supply like it has been for many months. So to me, it's a major hurricane boom, and everything, and it's complex, all the variables of how that will affect South Florida, including insurance costs, and people's desire to move to Southeast Florida if they start reading about things have been leveled and people are without electricity for 3 weeks. I mean, I remember when Wilma hit, that was in 2005. That was only a Category 2, but for those of you that were in the area then, you probably remember it got over Southeast Florida and it just parked. It just camped out and shook us. And I'm in Deerfield Beach, where it's all underground utilities, and we were still without power for 8 days, and many other people, it was 2 to 3 weeks. It took a while to recover from that. Southeast Florida is not seeing the type of catastrophic hurricane that has hit some of the other areas of Florida where it was not so densely populated. So to me, that's the one kind of, thing that you always have to worry about in Southeast Florida. And now it's been so many years without a really bad hurricane. Well, do you say, odds are there's a pretty good chance we're going to get hit sooner or later. I think if we do enter a recession, I think the odds of it are lower. Ben's made a good case that we may already be in a recession right now that we don't actually see because so many of the numbers that should be included in figuring this are not computed into it. Because of the politics and this being an election year, we're going to see one side trying to make things worse and the other side trying to keep things as best as they can. I find that there's a tremendous amount when I watch the local and national news all across the country every day. And what I see is a tremendous amount of animosity in the country right now, extremely divided. And it's not middle of the road anymore. It's one side's at one extreme, the other side's at another extreme. And I worry about that, quite frankly, in the U.S. I worry that we are going to see some civil outbreaks amongst Americans. The other thing I worry about now is that we are going to see some terrorist attacks in the United States in 2024. I think that's a very real possibility. And how that can affect different markets. So, these are all kind of black swan events, but I think the ones that are most likely is definitely we're going to see a slowing migration to South Florida. We're already starting to see a lot of New Yorkers heading over to the West Coast now, which they never did before. Tampa area is getting a tremendous amount of New Yorkers over there right now. So, and things are more affordable on the West Coast as they are in the northern half of Florida than they are in the Southeast, which I think, you can make very strong cases unaffordable for a large segment of the population. If the rich folks don't keep moving down there, who's going to buy? So, those to me are the biggest things. Terrorist attacks in our country. And we could see, I listened to Christopher Wray, the FBI director. I've never seen an FBI director more worried about terrorist attacks happening in this country and possibly clusters of them. So these things all will have an impact on real estate and not a positive one. But that's kind of what I see as the biggest risk right now in the next year, Marshall.